One.
Okay, well, good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for coming today. We are happy to have you all here in our project management series. Today is the kickoff session 1, which will be an introduction by Mike Windroll, and then there will be a session by Beth Curran talking about how clients buy, which I think you'll find interesting. So we ask that you keep your cameras on during the course of the training, just so we can see your smiling faces. If you have questions, you can raise your hand electronically, or you can put a comment in the chat box, whichever way works better for you. But we're excited to have you here. Again, this is the six sessions in the series. So this is the first of 6. And I think that if you have any questions about this, about the series in general, feel free to reach out after this course. Okay. All right. Mike, would you like to kick it off?
Sure. Thanks, Kat. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for taking the time, like Kat said, to participate in our project management training sessions. Looking through the attendee list, I did see quite a few names of people I have not yet met yet. So by way of introduction, I'm Mike Windroll. I'm the Chief Operating Officer here at LaBella. I've been working with Kat and the operations team on project management training introduction for the past 6 sessions. Been very good sessions. As we move into this, like Kat said, please feel free to ask questions, raise your hand. While we are limited on time, we want it to be collaborative and address as many questions as we can. So the first session we'll talk through today is more general in nature. It's really more of a focus on general project manager responsibilities and definition of project management, and also building a familiarity on what to expect going down the line here as you engage in these training sessions. I do realize that many of you may be more experienced than others in project management. We have a different, varying cross section of skill sets, capabilities, so bear with us. Because it's hard to really break out a one session fits all, and it's always good for a refresher. So again, our agenda, I'll speak for about 45 minutes, 50 minutes. We'll take a short break, and then you'll move into how clients buy. So our agenda today is really, again, just defining what is project management, what is our PM program that we've established here at LaBella. There's been a lot of time put into trying to tailor sessions specifically to how LaBella approaches project management. Talk a little bit about PM responsibilities, which is really more for the up and coming. For some of you, you're very aware of what it is. What does it take to manage a project? The big question, is it for you? Is this the right career path, right choice? And then again, we'll talk as we transition to the second hour and how clients buy. Next slide. So before we progress, we wanted to start with just a short plug here for LaBella's core values. Hopefully you've all seen this at some point in your tenure with LaBella. This slide, for purposes of this presentation, I just want to focus for a few minutes on the first 2 core values. Honesty and integrity in all we do. As project managers, you may find yourself or will find yourself in many difficult situations that, you may be questioning best approach, how to take things on, what's the next move. And we just emphasize here that you do, as a project manager, always take into consideration behaving in a way that is honest and with integrity. Your life as a project manager, you'll build a reputation around that, and you certainly want to be known as someone that has honesty and integrity in how you deal with situations, both with your team and with the clients that you're working with. And then I wanted to just touch briefly on the stewardship of resources. when we talk about resources as it relates to project management, we are managing both the clients and LaBella's resources. When we move into a new project, we need to understand the client's program, the project budget, what we're committed to spend for them. And then we also want to look at our internal resources and the management of our fee commitment, and how we work through to make the project successful for both the client and for LaBella. So you have to think about that from the standpoint of our core values and the stewardship of resources as you approach your projects and managing those projects. Next slide, Heather. So what is project management? Project management is the practice of initiating, planning, executing, controlling, and closing a project. This is certainly not exhaustive, but these are some of the key things that you're going to be trained in and that you're going to have specific sessions on as you go through your project management training. PM training sessions 3 through 6 are built specifically around these process groups. Initiating and closing are generally a one-time event, whereas 3 through the remaining planning, executing, and controlling, you're continually revisiting that at each phase of your project and moving through those processes as a project manager. So I guess with that, we'll look at that cycle. You're going to see this repeatedly, again, as you work through projects, the evolving connection between planning, executing, monitoring, and controlling. They come up in every phase, and you'll be revisiting this at several points and taking a position on what's the best approach as you move ahead in your project. So with that, we can move on. So managing risk. Project management, it isn't just managing resources like we talked about in stewardship of resources and that type of thing, but it's also managing risk both for your client and for LaBella. Risk is real in all those boxes around the perimeter, some at higher levels than others, but keep in mind, in your documentation, your communication, your contract, your QC processes, and even with the relationship with your client, you are managing risk as a project manager. We've got a lot of help sessions and information on the internet to help you through, like QA procedures, standards, templates, even the proposal contracts and the contracts that you work through with your client. But keep in mind, as you make decisions as a PM moving ahead, through the project phases, that you're always thinking about managing risk. It's essential, and it's getting tougher and tougher in the environment that we work in to assess and manage risk. It's a real trait you'll pick up on as you do more and more project work, and you live and learn as you go through your projects. So with that, we can move on. So LaBella's PM program, this was initiated by LaBella back in October of 2019. We had consultants come in and teach project management to us project managers. And it was fairly successful. It was exhaustive in many, many, many ways. And we decided in 2019 to build internally our own training classes. And why? Because we think it's more efficient. It's effective because it's working with people, and you'll have resources within the company to work with as you have project management questions. And again, we built a lot of templates. We have standard contracts, agreements. We have a lot of tools and things that you have access to as a project manager. Where have we done this? We're doing this in all divisions across all offices. Like Kat said, this is the 6th we've done in recent history. We get relatively good feedback. I think a lot of it is around, more Q&A. So again, feel free to raise your hand in the chat box and ask questions as we move along, because we do move quickly. What is it? It's the LaBella way of project management. you as people that have been identified by your division directors and your management of people with appropriate skills and desire. But we still like to bring up the aspect of this in career pathing. PM is not for everybody. Don't feel like it's a necessary step. We encourage it for the right people, for the right reasons. But one of the things that we're running into is, there's a need for more project managers. LaBella runs a lot of projects through our system, incredible number. And sometimes, there's a lot of pressure to push people into project management roles. And I think, as you go through the training classes, continually ask yourselves, is this right for me? And you'll make that assessment as you continue to learn and manage projects. And there's sometimes there's a technical path on projects or a different path in the firm that maybe is more effective for people, and you have to continue to evaluate whether or not the path is right for you. I know, in managing the building engineering division here at LaBella for 10 plus years, there's many people that came to me and said, I never want to be a PM. I see what that takes. I see what's involved. Why would I want to do that? That's very clearly an employee for me that is coming to the conclusion PM is not for me. So why go down that path? How are we going to educate you? We're going to have training. We're going to have reinforcement and continuous improvement. The nice part of having this as an internal program is you have access to people that can direct you, educate you, and push you in the right direction in a manner that you don't feel like you're out of line. That's what the PM training mentors and teachers are here for. They're here to help people move along through phases and the whole project management experience that they went through. So it's a continuing process where you continue to gain skills and access to situations that you can get assistance and learn how to manage effectively and appropriately. So we can move on with the next slide, Heather. So LaBella's PM program process elements. First, I want to say a LaBella project manager is someone who leads a LaBella team. I think you all recognize that, but even bigger than that, you're also leading sub-consultants in many cases, and especially the client through these processes that you're going to be trained in. You're going to see today, steps 1 and 2. We're just going to talk through those items relatively quickly today, but the remaining items, you're going to have a session geared towards each of these projects along the lines of initiating and planning a project, executing a project, monitoring, controlling a project, and closing out a project in the improvement process and things and lessons learned that make you a better PM moving ahead. So I guess with that, we can just take a quick pause. Anybody have any questions on what this program is about? What do you think you're going to learn, or anything that you want to ask at this point before we continue? They tend to go pretty quick because, again, we're limited in time, but again, we want to get you introduced to, where this boat's headed, and make sure you're up to speed on, what's to be expected. So I guess we don't have any questions, right, Heather? Okay, so let's move on. So for some reason, my slide's not advancing. And now it is. Okay, so now we've got, I like to show this slide because, having managed many projects, I personally have gone through and heard a lot of these, and managing many project managers. I've also, hear them from project managers as well. So, we kind of label this in the bubble in the middle, common excuses for project issues. If you manage many projects, you're likely to hear about many of these things. The team was incompetent and didn't care. What do you do about that? Those are the things you have to ask yourself. My advice to people is don't let it get there. As a organized and skilled project manager, you're also a motivator. You're driving a team, you're pushing them, and you don't want to let it get to the point that you're reversing roles to say, I don't have a team that can accomplish this, and it's on them, not me. Don't let it get to that point. Be out front, be a leader, build enthusiasm, be organized, keep your meetings very pertinent, on track, and keep people engaged, and hold them accountable. Accountability is a big thing in project management, but to hold a team accountable, you've got to first hold yourself accountable to the things you're holding your team accountable to. So I like to make sure we emphasize that. I didn't have enough time. I'm sure you're, hearing that a lot in the firm today. We're very busy. We have a lot of projects we're running through. People are working on multiple projects with a lot of time constraints. I didn't have enough time. Part of motivating your team and engaging them is that they know, that they will have to build in the time. And that's part of your project role in scheduling and moving ahead a project to make sure you have the resources lined up, people are on board, and that you get a commitment. And certainly things change over the course of a project. And there may be times you need to talk to a division director or a manager of your staff to say, look, I'm, running into issues. We need to do something. And foresight and vision to avoid that is a key trait you pick up on. You can certainly see, you're going to have multi-cylinders firing on your team. And when one's not firing, you have to be able to pick up on that quickly, or hopefully only one's not firing. You might have 2, 3, or 4 not firing, but, your job is to get out in front of that and make sure you re-engage people and keep things on track. The project keeps changing. There's, the big 2 words of scope creep, which inevitably almost comes into every project. One of the big skills you'll pick up on, as you manage more projects, is knowing what is legitimate scope creep and what is not, and what to move forward with a client with a scope creep issue. Some clients, as we see here, the client is impossible on the right-hand side. Some clients will have nothing to do with scope creep, and you have to find a way to navigate through that. And what are the skills to do that? Sometimes we don't have all good clients, but you got to get through the projects. Not all projects end up being true winners. And I think LaBella has an understanding that we have difficult clients in many cases. We have very good clients in many cases. And it falls back on you in managing a client to understand and ask maybe for help and assistance to say, am I being reasonable here? What should my next step be when you get into project and scope creep issues? Because it almost inevitably comes up. We had a terrible contractor and the CM didn't help. It's big talk in architecture engineering firms. We question ourselves many times, the values of CMs, what they do in their role. They're very good at managing their scope creep, and tend to be very limited in what they'll do. But the best thing I can recommend there, both for contractors and CMs, is you build relationships. Just like you're building relationships with your client, your internal team, you need to come out of the gate building relationships with those CMs and contractors that come on board during the construction phase to try to maintain a positive relationship. Once those relationships go bad, it becomes more and more difficult. And trust me, you'll find situations where you do get into this. From the financial end, everyone kept charging to the job. That's your role in managing the financial resources and budgets assigned to a project. The biggest thing that we talk about here is building familiarity around budgets and what people have to spend on a job, because we still find many instances where people aren't aware of what their budget is. And really that falls back to a project manager. I mean, team members should be asking, but it's really a project manager who should be driving through the budget expectations to projects. Tying that back to scope creep, people say, well, we couldn't go for an extra here, and I'm going to need more time. You have to find ways to manage that, and sometimes we have to figure in ways to accommodate for it. If it's multi-divisional, you got to watch your splits across divisions, and sometimes scope is heavier than certain divisions than others, and we didn't realize that when we budgeted and scoped. So again, part of that is you're gonna see people charging time to jobs, which is typical for the process. I mean, that's how the company runs. Employees billing time to projects. Your job is really to be sure you stay on top of that and schedule it and have some foresight and communications if you're running into problems. We have mechanisms to deal with that. Lowering project multipliers, doing certain things, but that should be a last minute opportunity that you take advantage of. And we need to exhaust all other processes first before we go into that mode. I didn't have enough help is, again, scheduling resources on your project, working with managers, division directors, and your own internal teams to make sure that people are committed. They're aware of the time constraints, the schedules, and all the things that need to happen. And of course, the budget was unrealistic. Sometimes it happens, but try to get some buy-in at initiation that there is a way to execute the project within the budget. You as a PM should be involved in the proposal process. You're signing up for that project. You're signing up for that fee. You're signing up for the team. Please be sure, as you go into a project, you have a budget that you think is realistic that you can obtain. Otherwise, coming out of the gate, you're already far behind. So a lot said there, but again, as a PM, I can almost guarantee you're going to hear some of these, if not all of them, through the course of your career. So we just like to talk about them and move through it. So any questions? Okay, I guess we move on.
Mike, I've got a question for the team.
Sure.
So anybody on this, I know there are some who are on this call who have been project managing for various periods of time. Have you encountered any of the situations that Mike just listed through?
Yeah, all of them.
Yeah.
So that's it. Victor is an experienced PM.
We've had to deal with them all, right? So just, thanks, Victor, for saying that. So everybody on this team who, we've got a variety of levels of experience here on the team. So this to point out to everybody that they're on the slide for a reason. Victor confirmed these are things that we all encounter as a project manager. So when you do encounter them, also to Mike's point, don't ever feel as if there's no recourse, there's nothing to do, you don't know what to do, there's no resources. There's lots of people at the company who can help you work through those different situations. And there's always a solution. It may not always be perfectly ideal, but there's definitely a way to work through all the situations. So thanks, guys.
Okay, so just some highlights here around project manager and responsibilities. Project manager responsible for providing project management for all aspects of assigned projects. You'll go through your sessions and understand what all of those aspects of projects are and what's an effective approach to each. I like to take the opportunity, when I talk to the up and coming PMs, to really talk at this point about kickoff meetings. Effective kickoff meetings are very important. We have many projects too where, and I've witnessed it, and we try to track it as close as possible, but we have many projects where people will, fire the gun to start and they haven't had a kickoff meeting. I strongly encourage you to have an effective kickoff meeting that's scaled to the project. So there's small projects, there's large projects, there's multidiscipline projects. But step number one should be really to get yourself together, to lay out and plan your project and have an effective kickoff meeting with your team to get buy-in, address questions at that point, but you are in charge of laying out the project, the expectations. Again, you're going to hear scope, schedule, budget, many, many, many times. But this is the point where, flags are raised and you get certain questions and concerns. Let's address them before we get halfway down the line here and understand where people are at. And, you've got a good handle on things before you jump in the pool. Because then you got to start swimming, and, you want to make sure you got your bases covered. Project manager requires, again, probably beyond scope, schedule, and fee. You're going to hear with project manager, what's really critical in an effective project is good communication. Communication's a huge, word in our organization, but you need effective communication. Don't let your team drift. Make sure you're communicating with them. You're communicating with the client on all aspects of the project and relaying that information and requirements and, new information to your team through an effective communication process. One of the things that we see happen, sometimes, a project may go in a direction where you go on hold. There may be a funding issue or a concern. Make sure your team knows the project is on hold, because that's another big miss. You've got people running, and what they're working on isn't the future direction of the project that's gone on hold. There may be several reasons why it goes on hold. Many times it's a redirection of scope, could be. It could be a funding issue where the project's in jeopardy. There's many things that can go into that. So, make sure your communication is clear and strong, and also to your, external sub-consultants, that you're working with. There's a lot of work that goes into managing those processes. Your team's sitting there judging you as a PM. Why is this so difficult? That's when you ask them to become a PM so they can find out for themselves. There's a lot that goes into it. As a PM, you'll be the LaBella's advocate in contact with the client. There it is again, scope, schedule, and budget. And also, you want to build relationships with your internal team. You may have younger staff or people on your team. You want to coach them, mentor them, help them grow as employees. That's also a role, as you try to build the buy-in. You want your teammates and on your team to look up to you as somebody that's got their act together, pushing the team in the right direction. The old speed of the leader determines the rate of the pack phrase I like to use. You're the person that's dictating the pace and the motivation and the work that goes into that project. So with that, we'll move into what does it take to be a PM? Here's some key PM traits. Not everybody can be strong at all of these PM traits. In fact, almost nobody is. But your role as a project manager, you want to give balance and attention to all of these as you direct the team. Communication and visibility with the client and the team is something I'm really going to emphasize. And then that leads up into accountability of people on your team. You look again, as you look through these, you're going to say, wow, can I really be good at all of these things? The one thing that I like to look at in a strong PM is really the conflict management piece. You're undoubtedly going to have conflict on projects, both internal team conflict and potential client conflict that you need to navigate, assess, and take a positive, always positive, but driven approach to conflict resolution. Sometimes if you're afraid of managing and dealing with conflict, that's going to be an issue as you try to manage pieces that can go in the wrong direction. So you have to really look at yourself and say, am I really ready to manage and take a good look at conflict management, conflict resolution, because it's a big piece. Again, we could go through these and talk about each one at length, but I think as you read through them, and this will certainly be available to you as a presentation, make a self-assessment. Is this what I'm good at? Are these the things that I can do? Because these are the key PM traits. And it's also important to note that, handles multiple priorities well. You may also be handling multiple projects. If you come to the point where you're really a good PM, chances are you will be managing multiple projects. So, being able to handle a lot of things, moving wheels at one time, you've got to be able to handle multiple priorities, while being credible and flexible as you work through multiple projects. Most people will start as what we call maybe a junior project manager, starting with a small project and kind of getting up to speed and learning the process. But as you move along, there's a very high chance you'll be managing multiple projects. So again, we've moved pretty quick here. So here's some takeaways for you. Good PM is critical to our business. Projects, they're the building block of our business. That's what we do. As a PM, you have a critical role and responsibility there. And we look at improvements in our PM practices. We know they're necessary. That's why we like to talk about continuous improvement. That's why we're doing these training sessions. We're continually looking at training new people in continuous improvement in the steps of project management. So you have a lot of internal resources that you have access to. And please, reach out and use those resources for people that have been through this process and understand the same things and are having the same feelings that you're having on how to handle situations. The unified approach is powerful. Keep your team together. Don't let them drift. I say that many times. Run your system, run your process, get buy-in, and stay on top of it. Keep people engaged, keep them on track, and move things in a positive direction. And that's another thing, in a project manager trait, try to stay positive when you're handling all the things that you handle. A positive approach as opposed to negativity. Your negativity can bring down the whole team. You need to keep people energized in a positive manner. What you might be feeling in your head might be very different than what you're telling your team. That's part of the process, but stay positive. And then we talk about a better client, employee, and financial experience. We want to give you the tools, processes, and training to be effective so that you have what I call, this is the 3 strikes. If you're working on a project and you don't have a satisfied client, your team is miserable, and the financial results of the project were also not very good, you struck out. There's 3 strikes there. It happens. Sometimes it happens. But you got to be strong-willed, come back, try to make the next one better. But you really don't want to strike out. You want to make sure you hit a home run. And there's a lot of work that goes into it to be sure that you stay on track to make that happen. So I think with that, we do have probably almost 10 minutes for questions. So, we want to hear from you. We want to hear people's thoughts and ideas. So please use this time to ask questions just on general project management or the course that you're going to be going through, or any questions in general that we can help and address for you. This is the not having the benefit of having you all in a room so that we can call on you. But we are having to do this by Zoom. We would love to do it internally in a conference room somewhere so we can really start working through things. So I don't know, do we have any questions, Heather?
We had a comment from Brittany, and she said, might I add, enjoy the process and take pride in what you do.
That's very true.
Yep. Who else?
So maybe we can ask Victor if he'll talk to us. What are some of your experiences, Victor?
Perfect.
I can talk to you for hours about my experiences. So I started with Avangrid with a new department. So my experience has been a challenging path for the last 2 years. I work for the customer funded projects, and we don't hardly have any experience there. So as you mentioned, staying positive, staying the course, and focusing not just in my case on the internal stakeholders is serving the customer, the developer in this case is very crucial and critical. And when you try to help them and you try to continue to move the project forward with all the challenges that you have, they appreciate it. They start trusting you and they start working with you. Because what we witness, in my case, is I know my budgets are underestimated, and that's because we didn't have any references. We didn't have, much of the information that we need right now. We didn't have the upfront team. So also a key point here is continuous process improvement. Very, very key to the success of any department or any new project that is launched newly or anything, and that comes through shared experiences. For example, if you have a monthly department meeting, you need to share what you learned with the team, especially when the team is new, and that allows them to gain some of the experiences. And then what we have been doing is putting some actions in place, saying, hey, look, I learned this. It took me 3 months to get it done, but now we know what the process is. Documenting those processes, and then like I said, I can talk for days about my experience with these type of things. But you have to take pride in what you do, and being a project management manager is to continuously think outside the box to try and step over the obstacles. Otherwise, because every project is going to be different and they're all going to have their own set of challenges. It's just, do the best that you can do. And just like the lady said, take pride in what you do and move forward.
Yeah, it's probably worth noting, no 2 days are the same. Every day is a new adventure, and probably, one thing as a project manager, you're going to feel sometimes like you're out on an island. It's like, do I have anybody behind me here? I'm losing this battle. But you even mentioned it early in the discussion. Stay the course, keep moving ahead, stay positive, keep people motivated and moving in the right direction, because it can get lonely at times. You want a team with you. And that's very important.
You also hit on something, but there's the internal team, communication management of the internal team, and then managing the client. You touched on, Victor, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in some of our later sessions, but establishing a good relationship with the client and is probably the most important way, or one of the most important ways we can manage our risk on the project, because if something goes wrong, which it's just life, right? Something happens that's not ideal. If we've got a good rapport with the client and they understand and they trust us, like you said, then the resolution of the issue will go much more cleanly.
Yeah, one thing we should probably touch on too, being a project manager now and the technology that we need at our hands to do our projects effectively, make sure all your team has the right tools to do their job. We try to move on that as quickly as we can in our IT group, and we work with division directors, make sure everybody has what they need to effectively do their job. And then there's a whole nother aspect of that, making sure they're trained in what they're doing. You know, as you bring in younger and more entry level people and we work through projects, you know, it's one thing to give them the tools and the software, but they also have to be trained and be effective in how to use it. So that's a whole nother piece of trying to get a good team behind you that can be, you know, efficient and also gives them some gratification in completing what they're doing.
Looks like we have another comment. And Brian Van Acker asked, does the company have adopted PM methodologies and standards? So we will be going through that in this course. If it's okay, maybe I'll just take a moment and share my screen and show you where they are on the internet. If folks raise your hand if you don't know where they are. A couple of people don't know where they are. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. And let's see here. So screen 2. All right, you all see screen 2? Yes, okay. All right, so screen 2. So this is the LaBella homepage. If you aren't already aware, this is the primary way that the company communicates information out to staff. So if you don't already have it set up as your homepage to go to every day, I strongly suggest you do so. So all the project management resources that we have are accessible from one spot. If you go to operations, quality GPS. Last year we merged our quality GPS and our project management page together. I think you saw one of the slides that Mike went through, because you can't have good quality without good project management, and the reverse holds true also. So this page has both our quality GPS program and our project management resources. And what we have here now is a section that's entitled Tools. And this has all the documents that were prepared as part of the quality management system committee approach that we did several years ago. So there's a policy statement about LaBella quality. There's a manual, there's checklists, there's flow charts, there's all kinds of good stuff here. And then there are links to the various pages where you as a project manager will need to go to get certain information. So for instance, here's the link to the legal page. So if you need to get copies of our professional agreement, if you need copies of our certificate of liability insurance, contract review checklist, that's all here. If you are going to be going to the let's say, go to the marketing CRM page. We'll be hearing from our marketing folks about CRM a little bit later, but this is the page that describes where you can go and learn all about the CRM process, which is part of Deltec. It's how we kind of manage and track our clients and our relationships with them. So everything can be accessed from this one page. I will note that, we are going to be getting a new intranet later in the year, so this will look different later, but for now, everything is linked here. And if you have any questions about anything, please feel free to reach out to us.
Maybe just for a couple minutes, we can talk about contracts. We strongly encourage everybody to have a contract in place before they, start a project, turn your resources loose. A lot of times we get asked questions around, I have a contract coming, but our schedule, they want to get us moving. We have to get, in order to hit the deadline, we need to get this team moving ahead. You get into those situations because they do happen. You have to make educated decisions there. Certainly, in almost all cases, we want a contract in place before we start work. And a lot of our agencies will tell us, you don't start work till you have your contract and all that. Then there's a developer side where they'll tell us, we'll get you a contract at some point in the process. And you really have to watch that because you want to be sure you have a good contract in hand. What constitutes a contract? Sometimes people will say, well, I have some emails where the owner said he wanted us to get going and, he was, we were good to go. You have to determine and assess the client. A lot of times, if it's a repeat client that we routinely work for and we have a relationship, we can be more flexible. First time clients, you really have to be careful around that. And particularly with developers. So we ask that, you take every effort to get a contract in hand before you start work. Because we've had projects that finish up that come back with maybe a potential concern or legal issue, and we find out we don't have a contract in place. That's not good.
Jeff, you were nodding your head and I saw that you put a comment and posted a comment there. And I think you're right. So Jeff's comment is that the true test of a PM can't be determined when everything is going right. It's how they ultimately resolve an issue when they mess up. And that's true. And you mentioned that sinking feeling. I've had that sinking feeling many times in my career and thought the world was ending. And, we'll say this many times over the course of the training. If that happens, you're not alone. We've all been there. And it's time for you to reach out to somebody because I'm fond of saying that there's a couple of things that are constants in life, life, death, taxes, and change. You sign the contract, it's going to change tomorrow. Something's going to change. The client's going to want something else. Team's going to change. And it's a lot of project management is just learning how to deal with change. So as is life. So.
Can I just rephrase, this is Brian. Can I just reframe my question a little bit?
Absolutely, Brian. Yep.
So all the work that we do, I'm on the program management side,
yep,
working with Avangrid. And no matter the size of the project, there's a scaled version of their methodology. It's very sound of the, what they expect and how things progress. Standards, they follow PMI. So charters to PMP to, all the different quality gates. Is that something that LaBella, I guess my question was, is that something that LaBella has? Is that, no matter the size of project, no matter the division or, sector, do we have a framework? Do our people have a framework to follow? Is the charter warranted? Yes, no. Is it, that's my question. Maybe that's what we'll get out of this.
Yeah. I don't want to speak for everybody, but I will say, in my opinion, yes, this project management training was initially started as done by discipline throughout the different divisions in the company. It's now multidiscipline. It is intended to be used on all projects by all divisions. PGMS is a bit of a different animal because you have separate, very specific requirements that Avangrid has, but for the most part, it applies to the entire company. And there are certain things, the elements that are scalable within the program. And if there's questions as we go along, please feel free to ask, but some of that comes with experience. Some of that's very directly, very clearly laid out. But Mike and Sue, I don't know if you wanted to add anything on that.
I see Sue turning off her mute, so she's ready to go.
Yeah, I think we don't, this session is more intended to, this is how LaBella progresses through a project and how a project, the expectations of a project manager at LaBella versus going in depth, with PMI or other, making it more philosophical. It's meant to be more kind of walking through the steps, but it does follow traditional, project management principles. We just make it more operational.
Understood. Thank you.
Thanks for the question, Brian. Okay, Heather, is it, we'll have more other time for questions later, but is it time for our quick break before we?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so we'll take what do we typically do? A 10-minute break?
10 minutes, yes.
We'll do a 10-minute break, everybody, and then when we come back, we will hear from Beth Curran.